Well, there was a husband and wife who had been married for 60 years. That's a long time. And had no secrets except one. The woman kept in her closet a shoebox that she forbade her husband from ever opening. But when she was on her deathbed, and with her blessing, he opened the box and found a crocheted doll and $95,000 in cash. My mother told me that the secret to a happy marriage was never to argue, she explained. Instead, I should keep quiet and crochet a doll. Her husband was touched. Only one doll was in the box. That meant she'd been angry with him only once in 60 years. But what about all this money, he asked. Oh, she said, that's the money I made from selling the dolls. You knew that was coming, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. 60 years, a long time. So, I'm so excited that this is our beginning of our 6-week exploration into Brene Brown's Braving the Wilderness. And if you're not familiar with Brene Brown, let me give you just a little bit of background information. She's a research professor at the University of Houston who has spent the past 16 years studying courage, vulnerability, empathy, and shame. She's authored 4 books: The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and Braving the Wilderness. And Brene's bottom line, I love this. I believe that vulnerability, the willingness to be, quote unquote, all in, even when you know, excuse me, it can mean failing and hurting, is brave. I do not believe that cussing and praying are mutually exclusive. And I absolutely believe that the passing lane is for passing only. She's funny. So Brene has done some powerful TED Talks. So if you'd like to go online and see her, you'll get an experience of her wisdom, of her vulnerability, and her authenticity. So, Braving the Wilderness is her latest book that addresses what we are experiencing right now is what she says is a spiritual crisis of disconnection. As I think we all know, we are living in heightened polarization in our society. It shows up in many ways. Not belonging because of our culture, our race, our religion, our economic standing, our education level, our family background, where and how we live, who we love, even how busy we are. We can feel isolated and polarized. And on Wednesday night we were talking about this, and I was sharing that I feel this way, in my neighborhood, and it's of my own doing. I was sharing, I will pull into my driveway, and the garage door goes up, and my neighbors are outside in their driveway, and so when the door, I'm like, hi. We don't stop. I don't stop often to just connect and say, how's your day? How you doing? So, and then of course there's politics. Yay. An obvious place where we're polarized, where people have views all over the spectrum about immigration, the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, climate change, the economy. The thing that's really gone out the window, though, is our ability to reach across the aisle and have a conversation with someone that thinks differently and walk away from that conversation, having a civil and respectful dialogue. It used to be that, I don't know, of course there's that belief that whatever you do in any conversation, avoid religion and politics. But there are, times when we can engage. And I can remember having pretty lively conversations about those two topics and it not being quite as heated, it feels like, as it is today. Our discussions evolve into personal attacks. All of a sudden, not all of a sudden really, but I feel it in the moment suddenly. Sometimes that, beliefs can become who I am. I'm like, wow, is that really the truth of me? Our beliefs, I think, have become how we identify ourselves, versus who we truly are. So, and it becomes, our words and our beliefs have become ammunition in a war to be right. So nothing evolves. Nothing really changes. So we're feeling polarized, isolated from each other because of our differences, and it creates hurt. It creates tension and anxiety and shame and guilt. And the thing is, I don't think we trust ourselves right now, to really have these kind of conversations in a loving way because things have gotten so heated, and to still stay authentic to who we are, because we want to stay authentic to who we are. But many of us have gathered evidence when we have these kind of scary conversations that we lose people in our lives. People have even lost jobs. They lost relationships. So, and we walk away in frustration. And I think we don't also trust other people to receive our authenticity. We're afraid of their judgments. Can they trust? Can they hold a confidence? Can we be honest? Can they be kind? And I think often we project our own fears onto them. So here we go. So some of this, most of this, I believe, stems from our childhood where we made up beliefs about ourselves. When we first didn't belong. And I think many of us on the conscious spiritual journey who are looking inside to do our work and our healing can probably speak to a time in our childhood when we didn't belong. And for many of us, it was in our family system. Yeah, and talk about hurt and shame and guilt and all the things that we make up, when we're children, before we really have someone telling us, no, that's not true. It was not about you. It's not your fault. And Lord knows if we're different. I was sharing in class on Wednesday night that the first 5 years of my life, I went to the same elementary school. So we kind of just, went through the first 5 years of school together. And, and when I was going to school, it was 1 through 6, 7 through 9, and 10 through 12. And so I got to go, because they changed the zoning in my hometown, I got to go to a new elementary school in the 6th grade. And let me tell you, that was hell. I was being honest. If you can imagine a 6th grader that was 5'9", and also my mom, was struggling to put me in clothes, because my father left my home when I was 3 and she was a secretary. And so, I didn't look right. I was different, and wow, the target of some shame. And see, and those kinds of things, as we grow up, they kind of stick to us and go, ow. Yeah. And so the opportunity that we have in this conversation of feeling polarized is to look at our own journey and to do some investigation of where have I felt polarized in here. Because folks, in this polarized world, if we continue to look out here to feel our connection, how's that working for us? And so there's a quote from Maya Angelou that has meant so much to Brene. And I'm just going to share it with you this morning because it's just beautiful and it speaks to this perfectly. You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high. The reward is great. I'm going to read that again. You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high. The reward is great. Yeah. So we talked about this on Wednesday night, and what we got to together was that what Maya is talking about here is the kind of belonging that is about ourselves, when we belong to ourselves. You know, when we belong to ourselves, we can stand in what Brene calls the wilderness of polarization, of differing ideas coming at us, of people's scrutiny and judgments, and we can more readily stand and anchor in what's true. It's kind of like we're rooted and we can just bend. So we can belong every place, and then also no place. Because no place out here is the truth of us. This is the truth of us. And so when I was writing this message, a verse of Jesus came to my heart that said, this is quoted in John, "It is not I, but the Father within that does the work." And in unity, we've interpreted that it is not I, but the Christ within that does the work. Because the Father is the principle, is the divinity, the Christ. And so, as we break that apart in this conversation, it is not I, it is not me, Sheryl, the ego, my belief system, my views, my opinions, that does the work of belonging. It's the claiming of the Christ that I am, that we all are. It is our infinite life and wisdom and love and all that we are. It's our divinity, folks. That's our home. And that's what connects us. And as difficult as it can be in our world to see that divinity in people that we just think are a little crazy, or they're doing crazy things, you know, and they're believing things that we just feel just the antithesis of who we are and what's true. The thing that can be the most difficult to remember is that whether they believe it or not, they are divine too. They are made of the same stuff that you are, that we are. And I think that's what Brene is trying to support us in knowing, is that, you know, that we get to come home to ourselves. We get to belong to ourselves. You know, Mother Teresa said, we've just forgotten that we belong to each other. You know, we've forgotten that we're loved. We've forgotten that we're whole and beautiful and magnificent. No matter how we're showing up here, whether we're 5'9" in the 6th grade or, you know, black, white, gay, straight, whatever. We're all the Christ. And the work is to come home. It's not I, but the Christ within that does the work. And it's not a passive, like, okay, I'm just going to claim my identity and I'm going to have the work done. No, it's us moving our feet to do whatever's ours to do, to heal, you know, to do our inner work and to heal whatever's telling us we don't belong. Because, folks, we belong, because we belong right here. We belong to ourselves. The reward is great and the price is high. Because, you know, I can imagine, you know, when you're on the conscious spiritual journey, there are going to be some people that just don't understand you. That's right. There are going to be some people that say, what is wrong with you? Where have you gone? You know, I joke, and I've talked to you about My mama still has me on every prayer list there is. And because, I came from the Baptist tradition, and she just thinks, Unity, you're just, well. And it was okay when I was just taking classes, but when I told her I was going to ministerial school, oh, Lord, the prayers started. Yeah. So, the reward, the price is high, folks, because not everybody's going to understand you when you want to come home to yourself and you want to live from your authentic voice and own your power and own your beauty and own your magnificence. People are going to say, who are you? You're just that girl from Charlotte. Yeah. Yeah. Jesus ran into that too, Oh, that's just that carpenter's son. Yeah. But the reward is great, Maya says. The reward is great. Because there is nothing, folks, like just being at home in your skin and knowing who you are and knowing how beautiful you are. And I know we all have our moments. And we look in the mirror and go, what? But the truth is, underneath all this is the magnificence and beauty and wholeness that we are. And I want to read you what Brene says as true belonging. The spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone in the wilderness. Sounds good, doesn't it? True belonging doesn't require you to change who you are. It requires you to be who you are. It's not something negotiated externally. It's what you carry in your heart. And when we reach this place, we belong everywhere and nowhere. You get it? Yeah. Brene describes this as when you belong everywhere and nowhere, you're breaking down the walls. We're abandoning our ideological bunkers and living from our wild heart rather than our weary hurt. It's belonging to ourselves so fully that you're willing to stand alone in that authenticity, self-love, and acceptance, regardless of the opinions and judgments of others, which we can never control or manage anyway, right? How's that working for us? Standing alone is called the wilderness, and it can feel unholy because it can be a place where the fingers of betrayal are pointed at us from others in our tribe. Moving out of the tribal mentality into extended community takes great courage, wisdom, and self-love. The price is high, but the reward is great. So belonging everywhere and nowhere speaks to the importance of being with and being alone and loving and accepting ourselves along the way. Yeah. In the midst of all that's happening, folks, we can belong. We do belong inherently. It's just really knowing it. And being able to stand anchored in our magnificence and our beauty and our wholeness no matter what. How's that sound? Yeah. 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 So, I'm going to invite you to go on this journey for the next 6 weeks, and we're going to talk about Brene's work. And she's going to bring home to us some practices that she's created that have supported her on her journey in true belonging. And it's just perfect right now for the climate that we're living in. It's great. So let's come and delve in together over the next 6 weeks. And I have invited the class on Wednesday night. By the way, we just had an amazing Wednesday night. We had over 20 people that came with just their hearts wide open and their authentic selves expressing. It was just beautiful. So please come join us. It's not too late on Wednesday nights at 7:15. And so this week, I invited them, I'm going to invite you to start a journal, if you don't already journal, and start journaling about what true belonging means to you. You can do it on the computer, however way it works right for you. And I just invite you this week to look at where you felt like you've belonged. Where have you felt like you've belonged and why? Where have you felt like you haven't belonged and why? And start going deeper. Oh, that's my mantra. I love it. Go deeper. What's that about for you? What does that trigger from your childhood? What is that? Just do some work. It's beautiful work. It's the work. And just know that the divinity that you are is always present, is always there. And if you need support, that's what community is for. We're here. So let's affirm together. I belong as I trust and share my authentic self with the world. I am enough. I am valuable and capable. I am deepening my courage to stand alone. And so it is. And yes, we are.